post-traumatic stress disorder, that you don't inadvertently introduce more stress than is there. But with casual things like fears of snakes and spiders, you just 15 minutes is all it takes.
Wow. So then how do veterans get this free service? How do they get a hold of you and your organization?
Well, probably the best thing to do is to go to our website and complete the form. And the website would be www.scs-matters.com. And just scroll down on the home page and you'll find a link to the form to fill out. And I'm glad to work for veterans. What I really want to do is to train veterans to help other veterans.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is something that they can learn to do to help each other.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you for stopping in this morning and giving some important information to folks who are probably out there suffering and need a better way than medication and spending a lot of time and money with their insurance company and their doctors in treating something that unfortunately is becoming bigger and bigger problem as we have more and more veterans, more and more people going through some traumatic times in their lives. So appreciate your time very much.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Not at all. It is 8:57.
And in the spotlight today, kind of a different concept, a new idea maybe for some of you today. It's neuro-linguistic programming, and we're going to talk about it specifically for veterans today. My guest is Dr. Joel Bowman, and he is from Subtle Communication Systems. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Brenda.
Glad to have you here today. Now, this is probably going to be kind of a new concept for a lot of people, maybe hearing about this for the first time today.
I can imagine that it will be new.
Yeah.
Neuro-linguistic programming was actually developed in the late 1970s, early 1980s by a couple of guys named Richard Bandler and John Grinder. And they wrote a number of books about it in those days. And it was not as well accepted in the States as it has been in Europe and in Asia for one reason or another. The technical definition of neuro-linguistic programming is that it is the study of the structure of subjective experience. How we structure things in our minds influences how we feel, how we behave, and the way we respond to the external environment. The history of that would start with a guy named Alfred Kurtzipski, who wrote a book called Science and Sanity, which had to do with the way people's maps in their minds of external reality don't match reality with a degree of consistency. And yet the only thing people have to go by is the maps they're carrying around in their heads, and so they try to make the external reality fit their maps. Now, the process that I use in working with veterans for post-traumatic stress disorder, or with anybody who has anything from mild anxiety all the way over to something as severe as post-traumatic stress, is based on a procedure developed early on by Bandler and Grinder called the fast phobia cure. And the first time I did it, I had only read about it. I'd never seen it done. I'd never heard anybody talk about it, but I had read those early NLP books. And I was doing a communication skills workshop at what then was the Upjohn Company, which has gone the same way the Heath Company went here in Benton Harbor, St. Joe. And a woman was fidgeting, and I asked her what was wrong. And she said, well, I have to go on a camping trip this weekend, and my husband's rented this little trailer, and I have to sleep in this tiny space. I can't do it. And I didn't even think about it, which has always been one of my troubles in life, is that I speak before I think sometimes. And I said, I know how to fix that. And so I'd said this in front of the 25 people in the class, and so then I had to fix it.
Then you got to pony up.
I had to pony up. So I took her through the fast phobia cure based on my memory of having read about it in the book. And then she went away for the weekend and came back to the workshop the next week. And I said, so how was it? You know, I don't understand it, but I wasn't afraid. I don't know where the fear went. Well, I changed the way she was representing that fear in her mind and that enabled all of her behavior, all of her neurology to change with the new belief. And at that point, I was sold on the concept of neurolinguistic programming, and I've been studying it since. So I've been studying NLP for about 15 years at this point, and I have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people for phobia elimination. And I've worked with a few people for post-traumatic stress, so I know that it works for that as well. The difference is that you can do a very quick and dirty fast phobia cure on somebody who's afraid of spiders, but somebody who has spent 2 or 3 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, you have to be more careful the way you do it. And what I would really like to do is to train people to do the work. I can't see every veteran there is one-on-one, especially I can't do that for free, time after time after time. But I would like to have the idea of being able to do this go out so that people can help each other in the process.
What is your general background? I mean, what has been your road up to now?
Oh, my road up to now. I have a PhD in 19th century English literature. I had a teaching assistantship in business communication. I ended up at Western Michigan University in a college of business teaching business communication and related subjects. I taught report writing for psych majors and minors. I have a good background in psychology, and along the way studied neurolinguistic programming. I got into that NLP originally because of its influence in business, and then I met Deborah, and she said, why don't you come to Holistic Alliance and teach us NLP and health, because health is one of the major applications of NLP.
And you're referring to Deborah Basham, who is your partner in this project to some extent. Yeah.
Who has become my partner in a number of projects, including the manual that you have.
Yeah.
And we started combining our skills. We continued studying NLP together. We've got a lot of workshops together, and have taught a lot of workshops together. And so the NLP is a core part of what I'm doing now, and it occurred to me along the way. I am a Vietnam veteran, so I have always had a strong sense of affiliation with veterans in general, and I have watched these people go to Iraq and Afghanistan, not for one tour of duty, which is what most of us did in Vietnam, but for tour after tour after tour. And with these stop-loss programs, so they think they're going home in January, but the stop-loss program keeps them there another 6 months or another 12 months. And so I have some sense of what's that like. I know how we used to count down the days we had left in Vietnam. And I can only imagine how hard it is to be in a combat zone where you can't count down to when you're going home.
When we come back, more with Dr. Joel Bowman, and today we're talking about neuro-linguistic programming. So have to really listen today. It's a new concept, and we'll be back with more here on WSJM, AM 1400 and FM 94.9, the news and talk of Michigan's great Southwest.
A little bit of training. Most anybody can learn to take somebody else through a fast phobia cure, even for something serious like post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, there are some caveats, of course, because somebody who has post-traumatic stress disorder may be on medication. And when people
prescribed by a doctor.
Yes, prescribed by a doctor. Well, yes, they might be on other medication
right.
too, but the kinds that are most dangerous are usually prescribed by physicians, because if they take an antidepressant, the body gets used to having that antidepressant in its system. And going cold turkey off of that kind of medication, it can be hazardous to your health in more ways than one. And so the person will feel better after going through the procedure and needs to be warned to work with a doctor to taper off on the medication according to the prescribed schedule for tapering off that particular medication. Because just quitting a prescribed medication without medical supervision can be dangerous.
Yeah, not recommended. You really shouldn't do it.
No.
Yeah.
And so that would be one caveat. And the other caveat is that you need to make sure as you go along with this individual to test to see his or her reaction. Because what you want is for the person to feel progressively better. And if you introduce anxiety inadvertently, then you have to back up and begin again. But most everybody can learn to develop the sensitivity and the skill to do this technique. And the technique itself is very forgiving in terms of if you do make a mistake, you do what's called a real-time edit. And you just say, well, let's look at that a different way. And forget that I said that. Say, let's use this phrasing instead. So, and I could train a group fairly easily. It's also easy to take a group through. In some ways, working with a group is better than working with individuals one-on-one, because if you have 10 people in a group and you take one person through while the others watch, they do the same thing in their minds while the person's going through. And then you do it with person number 2, and then you do it with person number 3. So by the time you get through, everybody will have been through the process a number of times. Very effective.
Let me go back to the point about medication. In doing this with veterans, have you found some people actually are able to go off of antidepressant or anti-anxiety medications?
Yes. Now, the most important thing when possible is to catch them before they go on the medication, because then you don't have to worry about that. But if somebody is on, that doesn't preclude the possibility of feeling better with the procedure, the fast phobia cure. But you then have to be very certain that they know that they can't do that. And that would be one thing that a typical veteran might not know. People who have read a lot about antidepressants, who are familiar with pharmaceuticals, would know that, but somebody who didn't have specific training might not know.
Well, I'm very fascinated by this topic and looking forward to hearing about the process when we continue in the Spotlight today on WSJM, AM 1400 and FM 94.9. Our Weather Channel forecast is next.
Let's call it NLP. And the rumor is that the name neurolinguistic programming started because Richard Bandler in those days was a rock musician back in the 70s and played an organ in a band called the Zebras, and he was speeding down Highway 101 in California and was pulled over by a cop. And the cop, in those days they very often asked the question, well, what do you do? And he knew if he replied, I'm a rock musician, they would search his van and probably find something that would send him to jail. And so he looked around at while the officer was approaching the van, he looked around at the books he had out. And he had books on neurology, he had books on language, and he had books on computer programming, because he was actually studying computer programming at a time. And he looked at the book titles and he says, why, I'm a neuro-linguistic programmer. And that's probably apocryphal, but it makes a good story and it has sort of stuck. But the main thing to know is that the neuro stands for neurology, how we feel about the environment we're in and how we feel about the environment that's in us. Linguistic is based on language. Language influences the way we think. It's one of the principal components of the way we structure our subjective experience. Programming is the other part, because you have to have a specific program in your brain to execute any particular function. And so when you change the program, you change the way we process that information internally, and we change the way we behave in the external environment. Now, with the fast phobia cure, what you do is you have the person change his or her feelings about a thing by changing what are known as sub-modalities. The modalities of the representational systems are based on the sensory systems, what you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you smell, and what you feel, primarily touch externally and also emotional response on the inside. And so when you change that, so for example, if you take an image of something that you like a lot, and you notice the submodalities of that, chances are that the thing you like a lot, you'll be making a big, bright picture, usually in full color, and it'll be a certain distance away in terms of the space that you hallucinate, the space that you create mentally between where you are and where the image is. And if you think about something you dislike a lot, you're probably going to get a dimmer, darker picture, very often lower in your visual plane than the image of the thing you like a lot. Now, not everybody handles these images quite the same, so you need to be able to elicit that information from somebody before you begin changing the way they process it. And one of the main things that we do with the phobia cure, especially with post-traumatic stress, is we get them to dissociate from the thing that they have been running in this loop that creates the fear of whatever it was that they experienced. So you get them to run it in black and white instead of in color. And you can get them to watch themselves in a movie of that experience rather than have them re-experience that thing itself. And then one of the best techniques is to get them to run that image backwards. So they have a film of how bad everything was. You get them to step into the end of the film and run it back to the beginning faster and faster and faster and faster. And as they run that back, the synapse that controls the loop of thinking that they were in actually changes shape. So it takes the synapse back to a neutral position rather than the reactive position that it had before. So it really is a very sophisticated approach that is also simple to do. I mean, it's really an amazing technology.
Today, neuro-linguistic programming for veterans in the Spotlight today. We'll have more right after the news. In the Spotlight today, we'll continue our talk today on neuro-linguistic programming. And today, Dr. Joel Bowman is here from Subtle Communication Systems, where he performs this for veterans at no charge. And hopefully, Dr. Bowman, you will have some other people out there helping veterans. Why are you particularly geared towards helping veterans at no charge?
Well, I'm interested in helping veterans in part because I am a veteran and I know what people who have been in combat experience. And what I would really like to do, because I'm also a teacher, I spent 30 years teaching at Western Michigan University and other institutions of higher education. And so I am much more of a teacher than I am a clinician. And while I will work with people from time to time on a one-on-one basis, what I really enjoy doing most is teaching other people how to help themselves and how to help others. And so I began offering the free service to veterans quite a while ago, but I haven't yet had the opportunity to teach a group of people, veterans or other interested parties, on how to use this technology to help one another and to help other people who need that kind of assistance.
What kind of help do veterans get now, as is?
Well, some of them, if they go for help, if they ask for help, they typically are assigned to one of the various conventional treatments. And most often medication, psychotherapy, group work, group counseling work, a lot of cognitive behavior therapy, and they now have video games that they are using to help people dissociate from their past experience. So they play video games of combat, where all the combat is taking place on the computer screen rather than in their heads or in actuality, which helps them dissociate. So it's getting at some of the same concepts that neuro-linguistic programming is ideally suited to doing and is geared to do from the beginning.
And those things can all help.
That's based on what?
I said those things that you talked about can all probably
help.
Yes,
they all help. Now, one of the tricky things is that those different programs help different people. So you can't put all veterans into the antidepressant
One
group.
size doesn't fit all.
Right, right. And that's one of the beauties of NLP is NLP can, because it doesn't, I don't tell you what to think in your head and then work with that. I let you use what is ever there and I respond to that.
So it's kind of a guided process.
Right. And in a way it is equivalent to guided imagery. And so if you're doing guided imagery with somebody and you say, find a really relaxing place, you're walking on the beach. And when I introduce that you're walking on the beach, the person may say, no, I hate the beach. I don't want to walk on the beach. That's not relaxing for me. The little fleas bite my feet, you know. And so when you think that you know what that person needs, it may not really fit that person to the degree that you want. And one of the things about antidepressants is they very often have to try 5 or 6 different forms of antidepressant
To find the one.
to find the one that works. And one of the things that they've discovered, just has been in the news recently, is that antidepressants really don't work better than placebos. Placebos work just as well as antidepressants, and placebos have no side effects. And so you don't have to worry if you give a person a placebo. But the antidepressants, I think, are probably on their last legs in terms of viability, because it's one of the things I really like about science is it doesn't just say, well, this is it for all time, but it keeps investigating. And so as they collect more and more information, they are finding that antidepressants are less and less effective. And while they may have a little uptake right at the beginning, the long-term prognosis for antidepressant use is not really good. And so the reason that we get so many physicians doing it is that if they were to see an individual for 30, 40 minutes to take them through a process like NLP and collect however much they can get from their insurance company for that, they don't do as well financially if they see a person for 15 minutes, prescribe an antidepressant, and get money for that. So in terms of the number of people they can see and what they get paid for seeing them, the financial incentive is to prescribe medication rather than to engage in some kind of process that actually takes a little bit of time.
We could talk about the problems with our medical system for
right,
days
yeah.
and days.
Right, because
Yeah.
it's way beyond what's happening to veterans.
Right.
And what's happening to veterans is an exacerbation, in fact, of what happened, because they've discovered that the VA isn't doing everything it really could be doing or should be doing. So I think that the best thing is really to get veterans to a place where they can help themselves and help each other with a technology that anyone can learn to use.
When we come back, we'll talk about the process and what it's actually like for, it's kind of in practical terms, you know, a veteran may be listening or a family member of a veteran, and it sounds interesting. What should they do? What will happen next, and how long is the process?
Well, there are a couple aspects to what you want. If they want to learn to work with other people, then they would need probably a couple days of training to learn what to do in what order and to have an opportunity to practice in a safe environment so they could learn to do it with confidence. Because one of the things that happens when you are a practitioner taking a person through this is that they are relying on your sense of confidence to be able to trust the process that you're taking them through. So if you can do it with confidence, the other person will respond appropriately. Now, if a person just simply wants to get over post-traumatic stress disorder, I can probably take them through the entire process in about 30 minutes.
Wow.
So, and yes, a whole lot better than week after week after week of group psychotherapy talking about how this person shot at me and that person threw a grenade at me and so on. It's really a very simple process in terms of the externals, but what changes is on the inside. And so you change the way they process information. We talked, I think, a little bit, I think we were on air when we talked about the synapse actually changing shape. what happens when anybody develops a learned behavior, a routine response, is that the synapses that control the brain circuitry for that behavior change shape to facilitate firing. And so, for example, if you have a traumatic situation, that change can take place very quickly because it goes in with a lot of emotion, and the synapses change remarkably in a very short time. Now, the way you do that is you reverse that loop, that cognitive loop, so that the synapses go back to a neutral state. Now, it doesn't take very long for that to happen, and it would really be great to be able to do that with a veteran and get it on video so that people could see how quick and easy it is. I do have some video on YouTube that show fast phobia cure for a variety of things, some of which are more serious than others. Fear of public speaking will respond to this same particular procedure, and I do have one for that. Height anxiety is another one that will respond to this procedure, and I have a video online about that. But the post-traumatic stress, I don't have the video on that one yet, and I would like to have the opportunity to do that.
You gotta find somebody willing to let you tape them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and the thing is that there is nothing for anybody from the outside to see that would embarrass the
Really?
person. It's like
Because the work that you're doing is in your own mind.
right. What they're doing is in their own mind, and I don't have to know what they experienced to be able to influence that.
Really?
And the best cases, I don't want them. I want them not to relive the experience. What I want them to do is dissociate from that experience so they can step in and then run that experience backwards and return the synapses to their original state. Now, it won't take the memory away. They will remember that they were in Iraq or they were in Afghanistan and they did this, but it takes the emotion away. It takes the feelings away in a way that allows them to view that as just some other event that happened in the past. So it becomes more like a bicycle accident than it does like combat, a war environment.
When we come back, we'll wrap things up today with Dr. Bowman. Linguistic programming. My guest today, Joel Bowman, Dr. Joel Bowman from Subtle Communication Systems, and we've been talking most particularly about offering this service for veterans at no charge, something that Dr. Bowman has a particular interest in. But also, you will train people to go through this process. You'll also train them at no charge if they're going to help veterans.
Yes, people who are going to work with veterans, I'm happy to train them at no charge, because I think the more people we have out there who are qualified to help veterans in this particular way, the better off we'll all be. And there's no reason that they can't also use the same technique on other people who have other sorts of problems. But the main thing would be application for veterans at this point. And it is a fairly simple process. If people want to read more about it or contact me, the website is www.scs-matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, scs-matters.com. And on the home page, you'll find a number of links, including one for veterans to sign up to have a session. I can do this work by Skype, although it's most effective when done in person. But if people want to send me an email, that would be great.
All right, and how can people find your YouTube videos?
YouTube videos, just go to YouTube and put in Joel P. Bowman, all lowercase, because it's the Joel P. Bowman channel, and they'll see a whole long list. And you might have to click on the all videos to get the ones that are most appropriate for what you're interested in.
All right. Well, we really appreciate your time today. We've got a lot of good information out there for our listeners, and yeah, if you have some interest and would like to actually see it, go to YouTube and watch some of the videos, or go to the website if you'd like some more information. That again is www.scs-matters.com. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Joel Bowman from Subtle Communications Systems. Did I say?